Before we start, and importantly, I do wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I am sitting, and that is the Ngunnawal people. And the lands, I also wish to acknowledge the lands throughout Australia from where you are all coming from, and I pay my respects to ancestors of this country where I sit and elders past and present. For you online, you might want to pop into the chat where you're joining us from. As a national webinar series, I have no doubt there is a breadth of participation here today. I do wish to acknowledge the waterways, the land and the sky, and all those who inhabit this place, this country. And I acknowledge ancestors and elders and recognise those who continue to protect and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, and pay special respects and regards to those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us online today. Here at FRSA, we acknowledge the past and stand together with First Nations people in a true expression of reconciliation with hopes and aspirations for the future. So here today, you have joined this webinar to hear from Eugenie Collyer from the Smith family, who is presenting on developing cultural competence and cultural safety in Katherine in the Northern Territory. This webinar series is something that we've developed coming out of the FRSA conference, where we had the pleasure of being able to present these presentations as part of the conference program. The wisdom and insight was too rich just to leave it sit in one place in one time, because we don't record all of those concurrent sessions at the conference. So we thought that it would be really useful to be able to present these in a webinar series. You've read the abstract. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what you've signed up to listen to. I'm sure that Eugenie will take you into that information. But to introduce you to Eugenie today, she is the project manager for Katherine Region Communities for Children Facilitating Partners, and she has worked in the Katherine and Big Rivers region communities for the last 16 years. And this work has included community development and work with endangered languages and providing support to Aboriginal language interpreters. She may have a special guest joining her during the presentation today, but I will leave her to make that introduction if that happens. And sorry, I was being very presumptuous that you all knew who I was. I'm Jackie Brady and I'm Executive Director at Family and Relationship Services Australia. So hello to you all today. Eugenie, after that little gaffe, I'm just going to hand over to you and I will come back at the end at about 1:05. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. I would like to just say hi to everyone and acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Katherine in the Northern Territory. Katherine's acknowledged as the meeting point, and I'd like to acknowledge the meeting point of the Duggaman, Waddaman and Jawan people. Also within the Katherine region, which is the footprint that we service as Communities for Children Facilitating Partner, there are about 32 different language groups. And so acknowledging all of those lands as well, who are being cared for by traditional owners across the region. So as Jackie said, I might have someone joining me later. She's still to arrive. So hopefully we will have someone beside me to be able to answer questions at the end. But the plan was always for me to be delivering the presentation anyway. So it should be, I'll just introduce her when she comes in if she's available. Anyway, I would like to share my screen now to move into the presentation. This is a presentation from the FRSA conference, as Jackie said, in May this year. We wanted to share a story of what we're doing in terms of developing cultural competence and cultural safety within the sector of communities, community services and children and family services in the Katherine region. And we could see that there were a few different ways that we were trying to address this, and we knew that why we were addressing this was because it was coming through as one of the needs in the region. So I'll just share a little bit about Katherine first. I can see that some of you are sitting in Katherine in various offices, but hopefully there's some of you for whom this information is new. The Katherine region, or the Big Rivers region as it is known, is this shaded area on the Australia map there in the image, we're roughly 21,000 population. You can see that a quarter of our population are under 14 years old. So we've got quite a few children in the region. And we also have larger than 50% of our population are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. And we also have 8% born overseas. So we've got a very diverse population. We have English as only people who speak English only at 47%. So it's actually less than 50% being a minority speak only English, where I think in the rest of Australia you'll find often the majority will be the monolingual English speakers. We have 34% of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people speaking Aboriginal language at home, and also there's 3% speaking another language at home. And we wanted to kind of compare, show the region in terms of its vastness. So we're almost as big as Finland. And we also wanted to show that our population density for that small population across that vast area means that we actually are only 0.4% of the population of Finland. So we're very spread out across the region as well. The region is made up of 4 statistical area 2s, according to the way our region is defined. We've got the Gulf region, the Elsey region, the Katherine region, and the Victoria River region. And we try to support the communities across all of that region by providing service delivery and projects to some of those communities. And I'll share that on the next part of the slide. You can see the different funded projects and the red lines reaching across the region to the different areas. So we've got a project from the Song Room, do a project in 3 different communities, Beswick and Timber Creek, and also Bullman. You may have seen the recent ARIA Award winner for Music Teacher of the Year Award, Nathaniel Miller. He's from Bullman and is supporting delivery of that project. We also have Jilpmingan Community Aboriginal Corporation, and they've got a music program there at their school. Darwin Association have just come on as a community partner, delivering some sector capacity building, yarning circles with early childhood educators, and also supporting young Aboriginal women to be developing their cultural knowledge as well. We've got Katherine Regional Arts, who received some funding to develop some cultural competence, 54 Reasons do a playgroup here in town, and then we've also got Team Health and Eon Foundation, our other funded community partners. So as the facilitating partner, we support those projects through contract management, and we also try to understand the needs of the region and support the sector more broadly with a systems lens. What we found when we did our community strategic planning back in 2021 was that we wanted to keep our priority areas. So you can see there's 4 priority areas there, and also the vision for the region. And our Communities for Children committee are really essential in terms of bringing that local ownership of the work and direction of our work. And so through our consultation with the community and with the committee, we wanted to keep our children are happy and have everything they need to learn and grow. Our children and their families are ready for and supported through life's transitions. And our families have the knowledge, skills and connectedness to support their children's aspirations. And our communities are safe, nurturing and inclusive places. One of the things that came through our scoping was clear that every single one of these 4 priorities there was a need in all of these areas for cultural safety and cultural competence when services were being delivered to children and families in the Katherine region. So that was something we didn't want to isolate it as one priority area. We actually could see that it was relevant across any of the work we do, and it was really important and a big need. So as the facilitating partner, we're always keeping that front of mind when we're looking at what's the work we can do and how to support the sector. And so I'll just, park that for a minute, and I wanted to share with you some of the challenges within the Katherine services sector, because I guess these challenges are the things we're working with when we're trying to make change. What we have is quite a high turnover of staff and of professionals who are working in the community services sector. We have a fairly small population, so that high turnover is often recruiting from outside the community. And so if you're bringing people from outside the community, you've got people who may not necessarily have that cultural competence to be able to deliver services in a culturally safe way. And so I wanted to just share with you what do we think that looks like in terms of the impacts on remote communities and the impacts on the service sector. We can see that for remote communities that could lead to a lack of cultural safety within the services being delivered, which can lead to a lack of engagement where people living in that community or in those communities might not even bother going to engage with that service because it doesn't feel right for them to be there. The people there aren't behaving in a way that makes them feel comfortable to be themselves in their own communities. In addition to that, we have what are the impacts for the service sector? And we have these people coming from outside the community trying to deliver services, but maybe they've got inadequate knowledge of the cultural protocols to be able to deliver it safely. And so they're feeling unsure, and this can lead to burnout. And if we have burnout, what do we then get? We exacerbate the high turnover and we go around again. So how do we try to build up cultural protocols, cultural safety, and try and kind of ameliorate some of these things? And this is all coming from the perspective of, I meant to mention earlier, the Smith family is a national organisation. We're a non-Indigenous organisation. So we're certainly not in a position to be doing this work ourselves, but we can recognise that this is a need. So how do we support addressing this need when we ourselves are a non-Indigenous org working in this space? So what we're trying to do is trying to explicitly and consciously create opportunities to build cultural competence. The photo here is a photo of Selena Yubo in the corner there, reading a story in Creole, one of our local Aboriginal languages, to a bunch of children at a literacy festival held in 2023. And we put this literacy festival on. And just in terms of how do we explicitly and consciously create opportunities to build cultural competence, one of the things we try to do is make sure we have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander content and also participation in delivering community events. So we don't want community events to be only delivered by non-Indigenous people where community members are participants, but we actually want the delivery and the content to contain Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people driving what's actually presented and how it's delivered. We're also trying to create some resources in a local Aboriginal language, Creole, which is one of the main languages in the Big Rivers region. And we want to increase the access to cultural awareness, professional development opportunities. We also have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices are often, we try to make sure that they're explicitly included when we have other sector professional development opportunities. So if you're running a workshop, but you only have non-Indigenous people in the room trying to discuss how to deliver in a remote community, you're going to have the wrong conversations happening in that room. You need to have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander expertise and voices and professionals in that room so that the discussion has the right information to build the sector. So we've been trying to do that, and I'll share with you a couple of ways we're doing that. I've got a video here from Karen Manblue, who is hopefully joining me later. In terms of content and participation in the delivery of community events and promotion of and production of resources, what have we done in this space? One thing we've done is the literacy festival I mentioned earlier, and in that literacy festival we made sure we had some stories in Creole at the reading corner. We didn't just have English stories. Karen is the author of Molly the Pig, as you can see pictured there. And so she was one of our authors, local authors who read. We also liaised with Karen as our cultural consultant so that we could do planning of the activities together, including Karen's daughter put on a, she's a local artist who hosted an illustrations activity stall for the event. In addition to the Literacy Festival, we've also done promotion of and production of resources. We've created some Creole translations. We have a book, which is a resource of listening to children's voices and supporting orgs to be able to do that work. And we have now a Creole translation of that book. And the other thing that we're trying to do is we actually have a bunch of Creole books that are made by the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, and we're trying to support the community and Creole speaking kids to be able to have access to those books. That's in a kind of, we had them at the Literacy Festival, and that's in an ongoing way where we do have some Creole books that we're distributing to the community.
Just want to introduce myself before going on with this program. My name is Katherine Region, and this is my first book that I wrote, Molly That Biggie Biggie. This is my second book that I just finished doing it last year. Molly been get stuck under the car. It's really good. We see other Aboriginal people that come, from other communities. And maybe this year we'll probably see other, we'll probably see other Indigenous people that comes from another community with new books. Yeah, and we can't wait to read their story from their book, in Creole and in English. It'll be really good for us too, as a Indigenous writer. We can, when we write all our books in Creole and in English, we can give it to the school as well, for our Indigenous children or even for non-Indigenous children. Because the last time when I was with Smith family and I was working with them and did a few of them, the tools that we can change it around and came up with all different ideas.
Yeah.
From these books, from the English book, and now I see this one here on my left. It's in Creole, which is really good too for us all Indigenous people to understand. And even when we read it to our Indigenous old people that don't understand the English one, but would understand the one in Creole.
Thanks, Karen. The other thing I wanted to talk to was increasing access to cultural awareness and professional development opportunities. And so one of the ways we've done that is to actually, the CCC, our committee, decided to allocate some funding to support the development of a Creole course here in Katherine. There is one available that's a 2-day course, but it's 3 hours away in a remote community in Nooka. And so we had Katherine Regional Arts actually work together with Nooka to create a town-based course. And we're also trying to support them in recruiting people to come and do that course and promoting the course. And we'll definitely let them use our training space if that's something that's a need. At the moment, they have their own training space, but if they ever needed another one, we're supporting them in a variety of ways. And the other thing we want to do is professional development inclusion. So including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices in professional development. Last year we held an attachment theory workshop. It was specifically looking at, is attachment theory something that's relevant and useful as a way of understanding how to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander remote communities. And we wanted to make sure that the voices in that room, the minds doing that thinking around whether or not this is a useful lens to use in our work. We made sure we had some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices in the room. You can see in the photo behind, we've got Betty and Chio and I think Sherilyn, and they were some of the many people who came into that workshop. So I will just move on now to show you. Mooney is talking about the development of the Creole course.
My name's Jacinta Mooney and I work for Katherine Regional Arts, and we have facilitated the development of a Creole, basic Creole language course, trying to if not replicate, but have something similar to what Nooka, a community southeast of Katherine, was offering. There are a lot of people in town that would benefit from doing a Creole course, and so we also talked to the Language Centre in Nooka that offers that course. They were more than happy for us to also offer a Creole course. And then we talked to some local people, some women, Creole-speaking women, some First Nations women here who were really interested in delivering that. The women involved adapted the course to make it Katherine specific, because there are differences. Just by having a greater understanding of, specifically about Creole, I think people don't realise the origins of Creole, that it came about, that it's a language as a result of colonisation, that it's people weren't allowed to speak their own languages, and one would think that that's very widely known and understood, but it's not. So, yeah, greater respect, I guess, for the language and therefore for the people that speak it.
I do have my friend Karen has now joined me, so I'll stop the screen share so that I can introduce her, and then that's actually the end of our presentation. So we'd really love to hear any questions you have or any comments. And
hey Karen, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So this is my friend Karen. Karen Mandalou is our cultural consultant. You saw her video talking about, being the author of Molly the Pig, and also talking about that impact of having books in Creole available to schools, and, being excited about seeing other authors and being able to build up what we've been doing in terms of, having local authors and local language. And so Jackie is facilitating the webinar, and we've come to the end of our part of the presentation. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. For those who have joined, please don't be shy and pop any questions that you might have in either chat or Q&A. We've got some time. We've got 15 minutes available for Q&A. I don't think I had the opportunity to catch a presentation at conference. I'm always, here, there and everywhere, regrettably. So for me, it's been very valuable to listen to what you're doing in Katherine. And I think what really struck me was the number or the percentage of people living in your Katherine region who speak the Aboriginal language at home, that being 34%, I think you said in the information that you've provided there. And what resonates for me very strongly is that just the importance of language and having things available in the Creole language there for community. And Karen, in your video, you were talking about even going back to some of the older people in your community to read your story to them and their response and reception to that book. Do you want to talk a little bit more about, what it means for community to be able to listen to stories in Creole language?
It would be good for our people to understand. It'd be to understand that, most of us are now writing story about different things.
Yep.
And it'll be good for them to understand in Creole. Because they don't understand in English. That's how I think it's our second language in Creole that, because most of our old people doesn't understand. So we are, it's good for us not to write our story in English and in Creole.
Yeah.
But it's not only for our old people, it's for our Indigenous children as well.
Yes.
When they go to school, they can, pick up that book and, they can share it to European children
Yeah.
and teach them more about Creole to make them understand.
Yeah. And I have to ask a really ignorant question. Do children get taught Creole language in schools in Katherine? Or is it taught as part of the curriculum in the schools? Or is it something that they learn through other things like your Communities for Children program and so forth?
You mean our Indigenous children?
Yeah. Well, when children attend school in Katherine, are they taught Creole as part of the curriculum?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yes. And as I said, it's a very ignorant question of me as someone who lives on an eastern seaboard area that doesn't have, that level. But that's very good to hear. But then that also means the importance of those books in being able to foster engagement in the learning, because they have the availability of the stories in Creole to those children. Yes?
Yeah, I think it is different across different schools, and generally speaking, English is used as the language of instruction. So teachers are English speakers, and what you have is a child who is learning Creole at home, growing up with their family, and they come to school and the teacher is speaking English and the student doesn't yet know English. And so over a couple of decades, there have been various things that the Education Department has done to address this. Barunga School historically had a bilingual school back in the 80s and I think early 90s. And so that was that was something that was very explicit around including Creole in its instruction, in the actual instruction, whereas I think most schools at the moment, you've got the teaching assistants who are often from the local community and they would be speaking Creole to the kids, but the teachers often are speaking English to the kids. So in terms of where kids learn Creole, they're learning it with their families at home and in their community, because everyone in community speaks it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We do have a couple of questions in our chat. So Brianna is asking, or says, both of you, thank you so much. I feel renewed inspiration seeing your amazing work over the last few years. Any tips for the group around how to identify and make contact with an appropriate cultural consultant? And particularly for those in the non-government organisation sector, tips around how to obtain or quarantine service funding so that this critical cultural input can be appropriately remunerated in committees or consultant roles. So sorry, two-pronged question. The first one is, any tips on how to identify and make contact with an appropriate cultural consultant? How did you find Karen? How did Karen come into the mix for you?
I actually think maybe in terms of finding somebody who is a good cultural consultant, for you and me, it would have been our relationship. We already knew each other. We had been doing some work before. And so I was able to say, hey, Karen, we're doing this kind of work. What do you reckon? And so we had a relationship that we could build on. I think maybe the key would be relationships for me in terms of coming to somebody who I didn't know and saying, you want to be my cultural consultant? That would feel really weird.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I guess relationship building is a thing that sometimes it just happens. And then sometimes you have to deliberately meet somebody and build that relationship. But I think probably not knowing someone and approaching them for that would be tricky. But I mean, I don't know what it's like in other communities. There are some, I know that in some places there are businesses that provide cultural knowledge services. So if there's one of those, maybe it's about getting to know them and what they can offer. That's me speaking outside of my own experience. And then the other question about how to resource them, how to make sure that you actually can support that. I think this sounds similar to my work supporting interpreters in a previous role, where you'd often get people trying to deliver a project and they'd say, we need an interpreter so we can talk to the community. And you'd say, great, you've got to pay them. And then they'd say, oh, there's nothing in the budget for that. So I think it's actually about looking at your budget and looking at your planning, and before you've even started, your plan and your budget has to actually include that. When you're approaching someone for a grant, include the cultural consultant fees in there so that you can be prepared to adequately remunerate them, instead of finding at the end, oh yeah, we need to pay for money that we don't have, because then you get stuck.
Yeah, so it should be intrinsic. It should be intrinsic to the model.
Yeah, included in your planning, included in your proposal. Yeah, when you're actually asking for that funding.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have another question from Maddie, and she's asking you whether you can share some examples of how cultural competence has increased for your non-Indigenous staff working in the Katherine region. That's
an interesting question. In terms of my staff, I have a team of me and one other at the moment, sometimes two others. What I've had anecdotally from them, when they've gone out to Nooka and done the 2-day Creole course out there, they've come back and told me how amazing it is, how relevant it is, how they now understand aspects of the work. And then it also means that when I talk to them about, maybe I'll talk to them about going out to visit a remote community for a project, I would be able to talk about it in a way that they understood, in terms, they know that it's going to be, English is not necessarily the first language. They know that Creole is different everywhere. So if they're going to a particular community, they need to be listening for that Creole there. They also know that you can't just talk Creole to anybody. You've got to build that relationship first. So there's different aspects within the course that mean they're just walking into any remote community from our region with that understanding of that there's something else that exists there, not just everybody thinking and speaking in English and operating in one way. And then we've also had, broader from the sector, we've always had people say how valuable the course is, and I've had that feedback from various people in the sector. They've done the one in town at KRA, which Mooney talked to, and they've also done the one at Nooka, and everyone's always just spoken about how it really builds them up to be able to do the work in the region. But that said, I was wondering, Karen, did you have any thoughts on doing that Creole course? What do you think that prepares those people to do when they do their work?
It will give them understanding when they're talking to, when the old people, when they're talking to them in Creole, because they don't understand what they're talking to them. It's good that we are teaching them the Creole, so they can understand the old people when they're talking to them. Probably in hospital, when old people are in hospital and talking to their nurse, doctor, or any of them staff in there that doesn't understand what the old people talking to them in Creole, because they don't understand. So these people come to learn about Creole as we, teach them to speak Creole. So there'll be time for them to come to understand. Even for those caring for old people in the aged care area, they will understand the old people, what they will tell them, ask them maybe for water or, for something to eat in Creole, but they will understand what they are saying to them. So it's good that, we've got these people coming in now and start learning about Creole, so they can understand our old people, what they're talking to them, asking them.
Yeah, and they might understand, as well as that language side, there's also skinship.
Yeah.
Even you can't look at someone, or you can't sit next to someone, or understanding how that a group of people might not talk to each other, and
it's
understanding that.
They won't understand if I have my poison cousin there, I won't be able to go near that person. But I will speak to one of the staff to go near him or talk to him or give him something to eat or drink or whatever that person needs. Because through our culture, you cannot sit beside our poison cousin.
Yeah, so there's a real cultural knowledge side too. And another thing I think is important in learning about Creole in particular is it gives people an understanding of why people might not be talking traditional language as much anymore and what that means. And and also that idea of Creole as an actual language. It's not just a variety of English. And that's really powerful too, because sometimes you get, if people think it's just English, they don't understand why communication might be falling down. But if they are, if they know it's a different language, then they're going to have a broader understanding of, you need to have an interpreter. You need to be talking in the language of that person.
Yeah.
They're not talking your language. You're talking different languages. So there's that understanding side of it, and understanding each other better. Yeah.
It does sound, you know, for me, I've never had any of that experience. I've got to be honest in terms of working in community in that way. So I can imagine, you know, having someone like Karen who you're able to work with and who's able to, you know, provide you with advice and guidance through all of the, you know, the cultural awareness. You know, we're not going to be able to deal with it here, but I think for me, one of the questions is, it seems like you try to, in the absence, not everybody would be able to learn Creole, I suppose. That would be a difficult thing, but there is the sharing of knowledge around cultural competency and cultural awareness that you invest a lot of energy and time to within the organisation. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you both very much for being here with us today. As one of our other speakers have said, our listeners have said, it's amazing, and thank you very much for your responses, Eugenie and Karen, and for being with us here today.
Jackie, thanks for joining, everybody.
Thank you.